Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Glad to have you here with me today as we continue this endeavor. And I'll still kind of be discussing a little bit of some of the personality traits that I have mentioned in the last two podcasts of personality types of traits, characteristics, and attributes that people that have chronic illness um, always have together. They're always found together. And of course, these people are not born this way. They learn it. They learn it through coping mechanisms that are developed early in their childhood. And these coping mechanisms help them survive at an early time in their life when there was a lot of stress, a lot of doubt, uncertainty, perhaps even life-threatening situations. And these things provided for them benefits during those early times in their life. But as they developed these, it became part of their personality, part of their identity, and it carried with them into their adulthood life. And therefore, they become coping mechanisms. They create a lot of stress and turmoil within their bodies on a regular basis. And that stress, turmoil, commotion, chaos, unresolved emotions becomes the very breeding ground for virtually all kinds of illnesses from autoimmune, chronic pain, MS, ALS, and of course, malignancies fall into that list, but many more. Virtually anything that you could go see a specialist for, whether it's a cardiologist or a dermatologist, fall into that category. Neurologist, you name it, gastroenterologist, you name it. Uh, those have some kind of traits and trauma. Those have some kind of traits and characteristics from early childhood trauma. So we'll kind of continue that today. I am the subconscious healer, Dr. Gabe Roberts. Pleased to have you with me today. So let's kind of pick up where we left off. And what I was mentioning last time was how whenever we go through these early experiences, we have these coping mechanisms take over that ultimately breed illness long term. So you could say the cause of malignancy, the cause of autoimmune, the cause of any kind of illness that would have you seek out the help of a professional is not going to be found in the manifested symptom. It's also not found in the habits and the migrations of parasites and little cellular bacteria that are weaseling around in the body. So, do you have a chronic infection and you're taking antibiotics, or you may be taking natural antibiotics, oil of oregano, perhaps, or essential oils, or maybe even herbs, enzymes, and things for detoxing and things for clearing parasites out and Lyme out and all those kind of things. These illnesses are basically they're originated in thought. They are not they're not individually valued by thought. So doctors can kill all these droids off. They can kill all these things off, these parasites, these microbes, these infections with antibiotics, whatever it might be. And that thought process will grow new one. Thought is the cause of autoimmune. Thought is the cause of cancer. Thought is the cause of virtually all kinds of chronic illness. But here's the thing, there's thoughts you're aware of, and there's thoughts that you are not aware of that all reside deep in your subconscious mind. And the only way you know if they're there is to provoke them. So during a wealth building exercise that I participated in with a group of people that are wanting to all become prosperous, I demonstrated that these subconscious cues that are only going to show up as body feelings. And I did that by provoking them. I simply said two sentences, and I asked the audience to pay attention how these sentences made them feel. I said, I want you all to pay attention how you feel as I say these words. Money is hard to come by, and it's hard to keep. Notice how that statement makes you feel. Now, notice how this statement makes you feel. Money comes to you easily, you spend it wisely, and you always have enough. Now, what you'll notice with those two statements, which are just vibrational data, that's all they are. Vibrational data coming through the speaker into your ears, into your eardrums, using that vibration, your nervous system turns that vibrational data into a nervous impulse, a different type of vibration, and it goes into your brain and runs through a series of perceptual filters that were put in place between conception and five, and whether they resonate or not is going to determine the body feelings you get, not the emotions, not the story that comes up, and not even the not even the subtle perceived truth that you may be thinking, well, yeah, that's true. Money is hard to come by. Not for everyone. That's again what we would call a relative truth, not an absolute truth, right? And these are the things you have to start to distinguish if you're going to upgrade your level of conscious awareness of yourself and begin to truly heal. Because you cannot stay at the same level of conscious awareness you're at and hope and pray and wish and yearn for an upgrade in your results in your life, whether they're your happiness, your health, your well being, or your material wealth. But the statements that I said to them, this wealth building class, was to provoke thoughts that they did not know about. So whenever I say it's thoughts that create illness, thoughts that originate disease, thoughts that originate cancer, I have no intention of this in no way, shape, or form means the thoughts that you are thinking of right now. It is very directed towards the thoughts that you do not know about that will only show up as these subtle subverbal body feelings. And those feelings are vibrational data as well. And if you look at the way the universe, the way the entire universe is composed, what our universe that we live in is made of, it's waveform energy. It's light vibrating at this very, very quickly, that so fast it appears to be solid, but they're all made of atoms. And these atoms have a vibrational signature to them. And if you could hook up a probe to any kind of atom, you'd see that the probe would give you an electrical readout of positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative charge. And that positive, negative charge pattern would be displayed as a waveform or a frequency. This means our entire universe is made of frequency waveform information. So if those two statements that I said give you a particular body feeling, that means there's something in resonant within your body that is either in harmony with one statement or in harmony with another statement. The same thing happens whenever I work with a chronically ill person, somebody that has autoimmune condition, and I say, just think of this, you're worthless. You're a worthless person, versus me saying you're a worthy, valuable person. Those two statements tell a story about us, and they don't tell a story based on verbal communication. It is based on frequency, the language of the universe, how those statements make your body feel, give us an indicator of some of the subconscious thoughts going on. And that's exactly what I mean by whenever I say you can kill all the droids off, you can kill all the microbes, you can kill the Lyme, you can kill the parasites, you can kill the bacteria, the H. pylori. You can do things to put the viruses in check because you don't really kill viruses. Viruses are not alive. They're like chemical zombies. They're little microbial zombies. That's what a virus is. So you don't really kill viruses off, but you put them in check. You put them in kind of a prison, per se, in your body when your immune system identifies them and functions correctly. So any virus I've ever had, you have it forever, but it's put in check. It's put in prison. So, but it's thoughts that are going to indicate whether those microbes come back or whether those viruses go active. The doctors can kill these things off with nutritional protocols and different parasite cleanses and everything like that. But that under those subconscious thoughts that show up as body feelings will simply grow new ones. I see this all the time with my functional medicine colleagues, and I see it with patients that come to me that have seen every kind of doctor possible, whether it's a naturopathic doctor, a functional medicine doctor, an internist, and they have suitcases of supplements that they're taking, and yet the infections continue to come. Why is that? Because the infections are not a result of the microbes. I'm not saying that these things don't have their place. I'm not saying that these parasite cleanses and herbs and think that like that do not have their place. They do. But if they're ignored, if the self calling for self-mutilation by the subconscious mind is ignored, then those subconscious thoughts will just create new infections. It will call for new infections. Okay. So thought is the cause of misery. It's the cause of autoimmune conditions. It's the cause of virtually all kinds of illness. And thought is also the cause of bliss and health in people that are life preserving, people that are always looking at the positives in life, the ones that are always looking at um, the finding the right things to love about life, finding the right place, feeling like they have a place, feeling like they have a purpose, feeling like life is there to support them. When they feel that way at a very deep level, these are the people that defy the odds. These are the people that live a long time. These are the I shared on Facebook a few days ago a woman who was 104 years old, I believe, during an interview with a host, she was actually drinking Dr. Pepper. And this woman indicates that there was several doctors that told her, you can't drink that stuff. And the doctors that told her that, she actually outlived. Now, some people can see that, and we can see the same scenarios with people that smoke cigarettes or people that just have really unhealthy, quote, unhealthy habits. And yet they seem to defy the odds. They eat burgers, they eat French fries, they, are 78 years old and they move around fantastically. They have got lots of energy. And then you see people that are 55 that are crippled up. You see people that are 40 years old that have cancer and just, in a hospital, chronically ill. What is the reason for all of that? Answer: what's going on in their subconscious mind? Is there a calling for self-mutilation that's built up over time, been reinforced through life's experiences and added to that? Or is there a calling for life preservation where this person absolutely loves every part of life and their body reflects it and they're able to endure things like, toxins, and they're able to not get ill if pesticides, the wind blows those pesticides into their face or something like that. This happens all the time. And then there's people that are so ridden with allergies that they have to tape their doorways to keep air from coming in. And what is going on with that? It's not the microbe, people. It's what the subconscious mind is calling for. So long story short, the general cause for disease and disorder is the execution of a subconscious mind, which is, by the way, the most powerful goal achieving agency known to humanity, and it cannot judge a single decision going into it, calling for self mutilation or punishment or limitation. And that specific cause of disease is a compounding of a perception that was built from an accumulated experience that happened between the ages of 0 to 5. That's all viewed through a protective barrier called a critical faculty. And this critical faculty acts like a filter that learns early on. It learns by age 5 what ideas to accept and which ideas to reject from the initial happenings in that person's life. So the attachments that we find ourselves stuck to, all as individuals, and I mean all the attachments that we find stuck coming to our life, all the good ones, all the bad ones, all the circumstances, the situations, all the luck or the lack of luck, are all prescriptions of subconscious thought. Those feelings in our body, those frequencies that are in our body resonating and giving off a signal that's like a magnet. Now, the question is, are we magnetic to misery or are we magnetic to positive happenings? And this is all what happened to us at the earliest stages of life. Disease and disorder are the tools for the subconscious mind that it has at its disposal when it's programmed for punishment, for holding back, for sabotaging, for self destruction. Okay. Health and ease, to contrast that, remain the fruit of life when a mind is programmed to look for the good in life, when it's looked for the good in self, and the good in others. Now, this can take what that means is a person does not criticize themselves at all. Deep, deep down, when things happen, that kind of person that has health and ease and has the fruit of life, their mind is programmed to look for the good in the self, good in others, good in every circumstance. They do not criticize themselves. They actually praise themselves, even for their mistakes. That's the difference, folks. That's the difference between somebody that has chronic illness and, chronic pain in their 30s or 40s or 50s versus somebody in their 70s or 80s and life just happens for them and they're just always smiling. Those people are not critical themselves. They are not, they do not criticize themselves and they don't criticize others. That's really important too. Your subconscious mind can't tell the difference between the criticism you give yourself or the criticism you give others. It's just data playing. So if you are mad and you hate other people, that hate will eat you up. And we've all heard the old saying that says you holding on to hate and bitterness towards somebody else is equivalent to you um you drinking the poison and dying and it's unaffecting them. I kind of lost my track of thought there for a moment, but it's equivalent to, you poisoning yourself and not affecting them whenever you are holding on to bitterness, unforgiveness, when you're holding on to resentment, those kind of things, even when you're holding on to guilt. It can cause it to eat away at your body. So you want to learn to not criticize yourself. You want to learn how to begin to praise yourself at a very deep level. But let's get back to this subconscious mind calling for self-mutilation, characteristics of people that have chronic illness. So, like I said, health and ease remain the fruit of life when a mind is programmed to look for the good in self, the good in life, and the good in others. It's always there. You might have to look to see it, but you'll find it. And whenever we see these doctor identified disorders, and whether that's a conventional doctor or a functional medicine doctor or whatever you want to, whatever label you want to put it, um, most of them treat the same way. It's either going to be something natural or something like a medication. But when we see these doctor identified disorders as creatively selected tools of the subconscious mind that's set for self mutilation, now the subconscious motive becomes the much more important issue. And this is basically the backbone of my work. When a person comes to me and they have some identified disorder, I don't look at that identified disorder as the problem ever. I look at this, what is the motive of your subconscious mind? That's the more important thing. The individual labels that separate one disease from another become completely irrelevant and absolutely useless. Whatever the look of the symptom, whatever the symptom is, from gastrointestinal upset to chronic allergies to autoimmune conditions to skin conditions to things that just won't heal, malignancies, anxieties, nervousness, tension, tightness, headaches, whatever the look of the symptom, buried within that symptom is a memory, a perception, a thought running of a circumstance that has unresolved issues, which are calling for self mutilation. The symptom that arises is the answer to that calling every time, 100%. And if we look at research on how things like repression impacts health, things like suppression of energy, suppression of emotion, suppression of feelings, not allowing yourself to cry, whenever you don't say no when you should say no. Okay. An automatic compulsion, concern for other people's emotions while completely disregarding your own emotional needs. Saying no when you should say yes. Saying no because you feel like you're not lovable. Uh, Feeling responsible for how other people feel. Feeling deeply responsible for what other people experience, and you feel like you must not disappoint anyone. Like wanting to keep the peace together, not making waves, not provoking things. I'm not saying you should go out there and try to, you know, create conflict, but you should have the ability to express boundaries. You should be able to say no when you need to say no. And, not feel like you mustn't disappoint people, not be responsible for how other people feel, and responsible for if you do something, living with guilt because of it. Those kind of characteristics show a clear linkage that hijacks the ability of the human nervous system to manage and process stressful mechanisms and circumstances that are directly related to the body's defense system. So the brain centers that regulate our emotions, okay, is the same system that handles the functioning of the nervous system, the immune system, and our hormonal apparatuses. And so whenever you look at, let's say, investigations that are conducted by Andrew Kiner and Lydia Timshok, these are some investigators, and they looked at what physiological stress responses of individuals do through galvanic skin reactions when they were exposed to troublesome and irritating emotional situations on a video screen. And then they were simultaneously questioned about how much of these displeasing emotional stimuli actually gave them. Okay. The participants basically watched a video screen. There was a study done conducted by these two researchers, and they watched a video screen that momentarily displayed statements like, you should be ashamed of yourself, and you only have yourself to blame, and you are worthless, you're unlovable. And then the study group was organized into three categories, including people with melanoma, people with heart disease, and a third category, which was a control group, and they had no symptoms and were, for all practical purposes, considered healthy. Of the three groups, the participants that were diagnosed with melanoma consistently showed large interval between their feedback of what they consciously felt when they read the message and the resulting physiological changes in their skin as they read these insults and unpleasant statements. These results indicated they had forced their emotions below the surface of their conscious awareness to the point where they were just, not even if they were completely unaware it was going on. And of course, this research comes from the Journal of Psychosomatic Research. Okay. So basically, this is just kind of giving us a glimpse that whenever we don't allow ourselves to feel certain ways, we cap off energy. And this capping of energy has an unshakable unity between mind and body. And it's absolutely devastating to our health in long-term with long-term consequences. Now, these things are completely separate. They're completely, they happen to people regardless of how healthy that person tries to live, regardless if that person eats organic food, if they exercise, if they, are out in the sunlight a lot, if they are active, if they, take all these supplements, these kinds of characteristics will override that. And I see it time and time and time again. In fact, as shocking as this statement might be, I have seen now in my career at least a dozen cases of people that have went to a primary care doctor. They were suddenly diagnosed with cancer, and the individual went to a naturopath or a functional medicine doctor, somebody, a nutritionist perhaps, and they completely changed their life. They got rid of toxins in their body, toxins in their house. They started to take supplements. They changed their water spigots in their shower to not get chlorinated water. They, started sleeping on grounding mats. They started doing all these precautionary things in their home life and their lifestyles to change that. And they would go back to their primary care doctor where they were originally diagnosed with cancer. And guess what? They found that the cancer just continued to spread. That's right. So they found that cancer continued to spread. This is important to realize because we put so much emphasis, a lot of us, on all these things that are outside of us that cause cancer. Wi-Fi causes cancer. Cell phones cause cancer. That red formula in your dye causes cancer. Cigarettes cause cancer. Handling lead and ammo causes, cancer. Certain paints cause cancer. This causes cancer. That causes cancer. All these different things on the external environment we're putting attention to with not paying attention to how we're really living our personality types. How are we expressing ourselves fully? Are we living a job that we really enjoy? Do we feel fulfillment in our life every day? Do we have a lot of stress with our spouse or our partner? Do we have stress with our relationships? Are there parts of us that, like I said, and this is a real common one, that's why it keeps coming up. Are there parts of us that whenever somebody asks us to do something, do we immediately suppress our feelings just to please them rather than, you know, I'm not saying we have to be repellent. I'm not saying we have to be um, belligerent and, you know, cause a ruckus with someone's opinions different than ours. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying that we need to be rooted in ourself and not just ignore those deeper parts of ourself just to be pleasing everyone else around us. Because believe it or not, whenever those things happen over time, it's a capping of an energy. Okay. And if you want to see how this works in just a scientific experiment, Albert Einstein's famous equation, E equals mc square, basically translates to energy is equivalent to the mass times the speed of light squared. That's why earlier I said our entire global system, our universal, the universe we live in, the building blocks of our life, the building blocks of our everything our world is made of, are these particles of mass moving times the speed of light, atoms. Okay. So not only is this a very famous equation recognized across the globe, but it's also foundational to all phenomena in the universe. Now, how can you see a simple example of this? How can we see a simple example of this relating to repressed emotions, to energy in the world, right? Well, if you have a beaker of sulfuric acid and you dissolve a metal spring in that beaker, and then you measure the temperature of that sulfuric acid and you record the data, you'll have a certain value. There'll be a certain temperature data reading that you'll get. Now, if you repeat the process, you get a beaker of sulfuric acid and you get a metal spring, but this time you actually compress the spring. That's the only change you've done. You compress the spring and you dissolve that spring in the sulfuric acid, and you again measure the temperature of that. You're going to notice there's an increased temperature of that acid. So let me say that again. That's worth hearing again. A beaker of acid, you take a spring that's just a normal metal spring and you dissolve it in the acid and you take a measurement of the temperature of the acid, you'll get a value. Take another beaker of the same exact acid, take another spring just like the other one, but this time you compress it, dissolve it in the acid, take the temperature of that acid, and suddenly you'll notice there's a temperature difference. It actually has a higher value. Why? Because when you compress that spring, that E equals mc square is equivalent to everything in the universe. When you compress that spring, you're basically turning something into potential energy, and as you dissolve it into the acid, it turns to a kinetic energy, and that kinetic energy shows up on a readout when you take the temperature. So by you repressing feelings, um, whenever you are not speaking up, when you are saying no because it means you can't handle something, you have to be good to deserve being loved. And if you feel like you say no, you're not lovable. Feeling responsible for how other people feel and what they experience. Feeling like you must not disappoint anyone. You must not have any kind of conflict happen. Feeling like you're not worthy unless you're doing something, some activity, something like a duty that you're obligated to do. Um, Feeling like if people knew how you really felt deep down inside, they wouldn't like you, So you're really trying to please others, so you're suppressing yourself. And feeling as if you turn down someone, turn down a friend, turn down a colleague, a parent, a spouse, a family member, somebody, if you say no to them, some way, shape, or form, it makes you feel like you deserve to feel guilty. All of those traits, those things that happen are the equivalent of compressing that spring. That energy has to go somewhere. And when we compress it within our bodies, when we compress it by not expressing ourselves, that energy goes inward, and we see things like depression, we see malignancies, we see chronic pain, we see all kind of variations of chronic disease, whether it's whatever it might be. In fact, lung cancer, for example, is associated with people who are known to bottle up emotions much more so than people that smoke cigarettes. Now, how many people do you know that have lung cancer that have never smoked a cigarette? Right? And those people might be happy go lucky on the outside, but they're also the type that just compress that energy. They're the type that just keep those emotions bottled up. And by the way, lung cancer associated with people who are known to bottle up emotions is actually coming from the well-respected British chest surgeon named Dr. Kaizen, Dr. David Kaizen. That's Kisen. Okay. This is a reference from the Journal of Psychosomatic Research, volume 6. So remember, energy is the very fabric of our entire universe. We're meant to express ourselves. And when we are examining what happens, when we're kind of just giving an example, what happens when you cap that energy, any munition expert who understands weaponry and ammo and black powder and things like that will explain that you can alter the intensity, you know, of an explosion by keeping the quality of the explosive the same, yet modifying the strength of the shell that holds the explosive substance. For example, a teaspoon of gunpowder that's spread on the floor evenly and ignited will burn slowly and evenly, no matter where you are, no matter where you're positioned around it or how close you are to it. The result of this is an innocuous and harmless event. Compare that situation to one where you place the same teaspoon of gunpowder into a rifle shell casing and you hold that shell firmly in a vise and you hit that casing primer with a hammer. If the shell fires, the bullet is going to veer off into any possible number of directions, traveling anywhere from 5 inches to 500 feet. Now, suppose we place that rifle shell casing in a barrel with the exact same amount of black powder, and we place it in the correct proportion to the bullet and a rifle barrel and hit that primer again. It will shoot predictably, accurately, and now travel the distance of maybe several miles. Now, suppose we do the same scenario again. Same amount of gunpowder, same rifle shell casing, same projectile, same barrel. But this time we cork off the end of that rifle barrel and we pull the trigger. As you can imagine, the result of this is it will be a tremendously violent explosion, 100 times more destructive than any of the other ones I've described, most likely killing the shooter and anyone standing nearby. The point of this is throughout each of these scenarios that we're dealing with gunpowder, the quantity of it has never changed. The quantity never increased. So if the shell casing around the explosive provides no organized way out, the explosion obliterates everything in its path in all directions. For the person who has capped their emotions, not saying no when they should say no, repressing their own needs, being a people pleaser, saying yes when they should say no. And they continue to build up over time throughout all life's experiences without ever processing them. Okay. What I mean by that is I've seen a woman before who had a big tear fit. She started crying, just crying and crying and crying. And suddenly she realized she could pop in and out of a car faster without her back hurting so much, regardless of how many chiropractic adjustments she was getting. What did she do? She released some of that tension and pressure unknowingly. Unknowingly, she's explaining this to me, and I was nodding, and I said, "Here's what happened. You released some of this built up pressure." So, if a person caps their emotions and they build up over time throughout their life's experiences and they never process them, they never let them out, just like the rifle barrel in that last scenario, eventually it will explode. And when energy goes inward, disease results. It's simple physics.